Welcome to the Limitless Leaders podcast. This is a show where my guests and I explore and expand on all things mindset, leadership, and communication. On the show, I interview inspiring leaders, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all walks of life, where they share their stories, experiences, and lessons. This is a podcast for you if you're looking to learn, grow, and accelerate your life, career, and who you are. Wherever you are in the world, whether you're listening in or viewing the video, we welcome you today. Presentation skills. Presentation skills have never been more important to artfully convey our message in an efficient and effective way that creates impact and makes a difference to others. Today, I am super excited to welcome David Fish. Welcome, David.
Good morning. Lovely to be here and to share this conversation with you.
Yes, and I'd love to just give our listeners a bit of background. So you're a globally recognized strategist, business leader, and record-breaking pilot. We will go into that. Driven by a desire to make sense of how things work, you have a natural ability to bring simplicity to the complex, removing sales barriers and making things easier to buy. David has a 30-year career in marketing and advertising that saw him rise to become Chief Strategy Officer, and he has worked with and advised some of the world's largest brands, as well as global agency networks, tech startups, and media companies, giving him a deep understanding of what it takes to connect, engage, and convince. He applies his expertise to help others connect the strategic dots and unlock growth through relentless simplification of the strategic story, refining focus, and curating strategic plans that guide commercial outcomes, as well as helping sales teams become more confident and strategic storytellers. So welcome, David.
Thank you. That's quite an intro. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And we will deep delve into your amazing new book, What It Takes to Create Winning Presentations. I'd love to kick off today, David, just to, get a bit of a backstory on what's helped you become who you are and who you're continually becoming.
Great question. What's helped me become who I am? I think one of the things that defines my career and even the work I do now is variety and perspective. So I started out client side. I went from client side into agency, different types of agency, from independents to large groups. I went to media owner and then back into different types of agency. And so it's kind of, I think of it like travel. When you travel, you change perspective. If you never leave the town you live in, you think that's the center of that is the world. When you're outside your town, you realize there's different towns and different cultures. And I see business the same. When you work in different organizations, but different industries and different perspectives of different industries, you become more rounded as a person. You have more empathy to how different businesses interact with your business, why certain challenges are there, and how you might be able to solve for those. So now I feed off variety. So that suits my personality type. I love understanding how things work. And when I understand how something works, then I want to make it better. And I get to a point where I'm like, okay, done home loans, done credit cards. What can I do in auto? Okay, done auto. What can I do in booze? I've worked in wine and beer. And so I love understanding industries. Yeah. That feeds my brain. And I know for some people, they have to push themselves to get out of their comfort zone and experience different. But I encourage everyone I work with to try and get perspective, to see the world through as many angles as possible.
I love that, because then you get a multifaceted view. And you can understand diversity of ideas, thoughts, opinions. And I think it helps you become more curious.
And more rounded. That's like it's like a diamond. If you only look through a diamond through one angle, you only see one side. But if you start holding it up to the light, you see all of these dynamics that start to reveal themselves. And I think the world, but also business, is like that. It's fascinating as you start to explore those perspectives.
And it's forever changing. I say, we're in a new world of work and things have changed, and the way we lead, connect, engage, and present has to change as well.
100%.
David, I'd love to ask you before we go into the book. I have a concept or a mindset I've lived by since I was 23, which is the gift mindset, which is all about embracing, I guess, adversity and welcoming the unwelcome. What's a gift? What's a lesson that you've learnt that you've been using to progress yourself forward?
I think one of the so my gift is being able to connect dots. I can see patterns in dots, and I think the thing that I didn't see that, so other people saw it in me, and I didn't see it myself. And so the barrier is not listening to what other people, the positive things other people see in you. We're very quick to listen to the criticism and the feedback.
Human nature, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to asking, it's like literally asking someone, what's the value I bring to you? What do you see as my superpower? And it's a weird question to ask somebody. Now, I do this probably every 18 months with my clients. What value do you see that I bring? What do you think my superpower is? What can I do with you that you can't do on your own? And those questions unlock a perspective of how that person, organization sees me as a person and the value that I bring to them in a way that I may never get to on my own. And I think our limitation is we stress about trying to find our purpose and understand ourselves, when actually if we just asked people, we'd get there so much quicker.
Totally agree. I think we overthink things sometimes, but if we externalize it and just ask, it's a bit like I always say communication styles. Years ago, I'd try and work out my clients. Now I just say, how do you want me to communicate with you? Yeah. And I had someone the other week that said, don't email me, Renee. I'm in the car an hour every morning at this time. Just ring me. And it's been a game changer in that relationship, that interaction, and the meaningful work we're doing with them. So I love that.
So we feel like we've got to figure it out. We've got to figure ourselves out. We've got to figure other people out. Yeah. And actually, sometimes you can just ask the question.
Spot on, spot on. So, David, a lot of our listeners are leaders, and everyone's a leader. I say it's three-dimensional. We lead self, we lead decisions, and we may or may not lead a team. We have lots of business owners and entrepreneurs listening. Who's a leader that you admire and why?
So it's an interesting time for this question, because the person I put on that pedestal, because it's a big question. There are lots of people I admire and I'm inspired by for aspects of their leadership.
Yeah.
But so they may be a great innovator, but they're a terrible leader of people. They may be a great leader of people, but struggle to manage up in an organization and manage shareholders and investors. So it's a really interesting, the dynamics of that question. The person I put on that pedestal in the sort of totality of their leadership is Bob Iger. So Bob was, he's a long time Disney employee through many facets of the Disney business, became their CEO, very successful CEO within the business in terms of his ability to run the business with commercial focus, with how building a very, very strong and loyal leadership team and an incredible culture. And that, I think, is the challenge for senior leaders of listed businesses. Face that quarterly reporting cycle and the pressure of the external visibility of every move you make, and can criticize that. And the fact that Bob's just been rehired, having retired from the business, and come back in to help fix the business, I think is testament to not just what the shareholders and investors think, but clearly the team is welcoming him back. So I think particularly in those bigger jobs, because often we go to the big, we go to the Steve Jobs and we go to the Elon Musks, and I struggle a little bit, as I say, there's aspects of their leadership I think or the traits of the person that I find interesting, but do I rate them as a 360 leader? Not always.
No. And that's quite a common thought around it, isn't it? I'm a bit the same. I always say it's a bit like a network of friends. You have your party friend, your Zen friend, your supportive friend. It's a little bit the same. And I love that about Bob. I write about him in my book around the gift of optimism, because he rates optimism in the top 6 traits of leadership. And I'm eternal optimist, probably too much sometimes, but I love his thought leadership, and the fact that he's back in the chair.
Yeah,
that says a lot as well. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, it's very rare to see someone of his experience, but also age. He retired. He made the decision to leave the business and essentially, start to play a bit more golf, and he's made the decision to go back. So, and a long career. So, probably a hard career. So yeah, I think that is testament to how rounded as a leader he is. Therefore, and I'd encourage anyone who hasn't read his book to read his book. And that is an audio book. It's actually a good audio book. That one. It's an audio book for the car, Bob's book, and well worth the read.
Yeah, awesome. I speaking of gifts, in your book you talk about what was, I suppose, a defining sort of moment or situation with the BMW story. Are you happy just to share that top line? And obviously we'll give all our listeners links to get to you and your book. Absolutely. What sort of happened, and what was the key learning from that experience?
Yeah, so this was a big one. I was in an agency in London. We didn't have a car client. Car clients in advertising agencies are very lucrative. They do great work. They pay very well, and they look great on your credentials. And our CEO wanted a car client and drove BMWs. So when we got the opportunity to pitch on BMW, it was super exciting. And of course, a lot of pressure to win this piece of business. And pretty much from the outset, we were on the wrong track. We went straight into how great we are as an agency, how strategic we are, how amazing ideas we can come up with. And we came up with lots of amazing ideas. And we didn't really stop early on, and this is on me as the head of strategy, to think about what the client wanted from their agency partner, what they needed to see from us. And so we galloped into this presentation with a very self-centered presentation, and we spent 90 minutes talking about us and how wonderful we were and how amazing we were and all the wonderful things we could do. And by about 20 minutes in, you could see the client was starting to lose a little bit of interest and starting to get a little bit confused by some of the ideas we were powering through, because we had so much to say about how great we were. And we kind of knew as we walked out, we were never going to hear from them again. It was that terrible. It was painful for the last 20 or so minutes. What was interesting about that experience, so we lost that pitch. And the difference is sometimes you get beaten. Sometimes there is someone who is just better than you. Better ideas, they're a better partner, and you lose to someone who is better. In this instance, I genuinely think we were the right partner, and we lost the pitch because we couldn't convey that message effectively, and we couldn't tell that story, and it didn't come across. And so that was on us. That was our fault that we lost that business. And it was so bad, we never officially got told we didn't win it. They just didn't contact us again.
More frustrating.
Yeah. And so it was painful enough that we sat down and debriefed it. And that was the sort of aha moment, was we dissected in a genuine desire to learn as opposed to find fault. There were so many people, although I led that, there were so many people involved that if we tried to fire everyone at fault, there'd be no one left. The cleaner was contributing ideas at 2:00 in the morning when they were walking past and seeing us working on all this stuff on the wall. So there was no finding blame. There was finding ways we could improve, and we sort of dissected where we went wrong. We didn't really understand the client's problem. We didn't orientate our narrative towards what they wanted, and we just talked about us. And when we understood that, it was a few months later, we got the opportunity to pitch on Hyundai, and we corrected all of our errors, and we approached it from the outset with a what do they need mindset, where are they at as a business, how do we help them, how do we demonstrate value in what we do to solve the needs that they have and move them forward as a business. And we won that piece of business.
Which is amazing. So what was the biggest, for our listeners, what was the biggest learning or the biggest shift you had to make that went from not getting BMW to getting Hyundai?
Can't be all about you.
Can't be all about you. I love that. Yeah.
We start with this predisposition of the world wants to know about us, and the reality is nobody cares.
No.
In a business context, which is the space I work heavily in, but even in B2C with consumer products, we have this self-entitlement of everyone cares about our business and our services and they want to buy us, and they don't.
No.
What they want is their problem solved. What they want is someone to help them make money or help them overcome the challenge that they face in the marketplace, which is stopping them from making money. And so when we understand that and we go, okay, my orientation is how do I help you?
Yeah.
How does what I do, the people I have, the products, the services that I've
Mm.
created, remove the barrier or roadblock that you've got?
Yeah.
Then I find value in the conversation, both as the recipient and as the presenter. Now we have a conversation around what we could do together.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the turning point when you can get out. Often you'll start with what you've got because that's what you know. But
Yeah.
until you
That's right.
orientate that to what somebody else wants and needs,
Yeah.
you're giving them no reason to care.
Yeah. You're spot on. And it's goes back, to basic marketing and sales. What's the spoken problem? What's the unspoken problem? And I think there's so much clutter. Would you agree at the moment? Like people are pitching, there's online, there's tenders, there's so much happening that you really need to stand out with your presentation and get your message across.
100%.
A lot of being on the speaking circuit myself, there's a lot of leaders and CEOs that are presenting at conferences, and they've got the smarts, they've got the info, but it's all about the delivery and projection as well. Your book is amazing, and I love the layout, and there's lots of visuals, and I love that there's the 12, and I do all my things in 12s. I still don't know what's behind that, but when I saw the 12, I was like, are we able to maybe just do a quick run through? And I know you need to read the book,
Yeah.
but just on what some of the key strategies are for our listeners that are presenting one-on-one to a team at a conference, an offsite product launch through their business. Yeah.
So the book's structured around 12 tools, and those 12 tools are put into 4 toolboxes. So the 4 toolboxes are clear, concise, compelling, and simple.
Yeah.
Clear is who is your audience, what do they care about, and what problem are you solving for them? That essentially is the foundation of communication. Yeah. So I call it the anchor for a presentation. It's like the anchor of a boat. When a boat doesn't have an anchor and it's in a harbour and the winds are strong, the boat will wash onto the rocks. And that's right. What happens to presentations. Lots of people will contribute. Lots of people have got thoughts on what can go in. We need to sell that product. Don't forget, if we're selling that product, we can try and sell them this one and upsell them to that. That's all about us.
Yeah.
We're clear on the person, their needs, and the problem we're solving. That anchors the presentation. And you can go, no, we don't want that piece of content. That's not right for this. Let's make that a separate presentation, or that's not on message. Yeah. So that getting clear is the first set of tools. Yeah. Then we need to be concise in the organization and the visualization of our content. We will nearly always, in most organizations, have more content than we need for the situation that we're in, whether that's a keynote, whether it's an online presentation, whether it's a creds presentation or a pitch response.
Guilty as charged, yes.
Yeah. And I'm the same. We're all like, there's a mountain of things we could say. You've got a bookshelf, I've got a bookshelf. We all refer, we pull content from those books and go on forever. Concise is about the organization, the optimization. So how do you control the flow of information to land the concept and then unpack the detail and help people navigate through your story, even down to on a slide? Yeah. And how do you do as much as you can to visualize? Now, I have a belief that I've yet to be proven wrong on, which is every presentation can be condensed down to a single page.
I agree with that. A bit like strategy in a business, right? It's the same.
If it's organized and optimized properly, you can get it on a page. If it's not, then you'll struggle. Yeah. And so the tools work through in that second section on concise to get you to be able to do that, to get down to that is my presentation on a single page. Now, if I have to, I can sit in a restaurant and draw that on a napkin.
Yeah, spot on.
I can explain my concept.
Yeah.
Then we get into compelling. Now, compelling is the story structure. So how I'm very focused in particular around sales and business communication on structuring content to support the presenter, to help the audience stay connected to the story that you're telling and follow along. And this is critical online. Yes. And then help them take your content and present it on. In sales, we're expecting an audience to see content once and then become us and convince others of what they've seen.
Not the case. Yeah.
And so the story we tell, the way we tell that story, how we structure for a story, stories don't just happen. No. We have to establish the story. We have to navigate people through the story and we need to resolve the story. And the resolution, it amazes me the number of presentations that end on a thank you slide.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not how movies end. You don't sit through Top Gun for an hour and 48 minutes and the last slide is thank you. Where there's a resolution to the story that we've just sat through, and yet we don't do that in presentations. And yet, if we're telling a story, it can't end with, here's the terms and conditions and all the reasons why we might not be able to work together, which I also see. So the
Totally.
story structure is so important in that compelling section. And then simple is the helicopter view. Having
Yeah.
done all that work, you've got a set of slides, you've got a story you want to tell. How do
Mm.
you look at that from the highest level and understand what is the plot of your story, the plan to move your audience through the story, and the potential that you're delivering, which is the major benefits that they get from
Yeah.
sitting and listening to you for 60, 90 minutes or an hour and a half or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's how the book is structured, to work through those 4 sets of tools. And
Yeah.
they're tools so that people can grab them. You don't have to use all
That's what I
12.
love.
Not a
Yeah. And put their
process.
own spin even on some of those tools. Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
love seeing what people do with them, to be honest, how people take them and adapt them to work in their individual. And that's the thing. And like you, I work across a lot of industries, a lot of different
Yeah.
businesses. I don't want to build a presentation process or a
No.
communication process. It's got to work with how the business works, within how they do sales, their sales strategy, their sales approach, how they communicate.
Their values, the whole. I love the bit around storytelling. I'm European background, and I mean most cultures' stories go back to ancient times, but stories really do evoke emotion. And I even know, David, in a presentation I recently did, I was sharing some other people's stories, and someone actually went, Renee, share, and that's something that had happened to me. And it's irony in your expertise, right? I felt a bit self-indulgent, but I shared it. And people were just blown away and loved it. And it just connected everything. And I think with AI and everything, these human skills and this connection as people are yearning for it, even if they don't consciously realize it.
100%. And the book opens on a story which we just talked about, my story of
Yeah.
failure. We remember stories. Our brain is wired to receive, process, and store information as a
Yeah.
story. Whether
Yeah.
we tell one or not, the brain wants to structure it that way.
It does.
So
Yeah.
we can help people remember us and remember what we said by doing that work for the brain.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. And I think it's there's been some studies done around sharing statistics 20 times with a group, and then sharing one story, and all they remembered was a story.
100%.
So I think that metaphors, storytelling, the parables, all of those things are important. How much have you seen, and you're probably like me, we're probably 60-70% face to face again, because I love being in a room. We're still doing a lot of virtual. How much, what's the main change we've got to make when we're presenting virtually,
You
whether
really,
it's Teams or Zoom or?
yeah. So the once you're not face to face, you lose the ability to bring people back to your content through eye
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah.
Your little window in the corner, and your
Yeah.
content's now full screen. You can't really see where people's eyes are looking.
Yeah.
And so the structure of your content, so what's on the screen and what you're saying, must be in sync.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when someone is lost, which is what I'm saying no longer matches what you're seeing, the
Mm.
brain stops listening because it goes into panic. It now wants to be found. Now, imagine being lost in a forest. What
Yeah.
you want is to find your way out. And so in a presentation, it's exactly the same. The minute I can't see on the slide what it is you're narrating, I'm looking on that slide, and you start to see what I call it action man eyes. The eyes
Yeah.
start doing this. They
Oh,
start
yeah.
scanning the
Yeah. Yeah.
slide. That is someone who is lost.
Yeah.
When they're lost, they're not listening. So everything you say after the moment they become lost is lost.
Yeah.
And if that's the most important point, they've missed it.
Yeah.
They're scanning
Yeah.
the slide, trying to find their way back in, trying to find where you are. And if they can't, they disconnect.
Yeah.
They
Totally.
give up
Yeah.
trying. Now, that's terrible, right? Imagine in a presentation, in a room, if you saw that your entire group of people was heads down on their phones tapping away, you do something to bring them back into the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that happens online without us being able to notice it so easily and control it. And so breaking content down, not having wordy slides, 100 words on a slide,
Visual.
3
Yeah.
bullet points, image that supports, next slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's this weird thing with slide count. People go, I've got 20 minutes and I've got 40 slides. I need to cut my slides down. And what happens is 40 slides becomes 20 by taking the content from the 40 and forcing it onto 20.
That's a big thing I see a lot with a lot of people I work with. Yeah. So they're in their mind, they think, tick, I've done the 20, but it's double the amount, right? So
it's the same amount of time to present, which means you're going to rush through it. Whereas what you need to do is cut the content down to get more concise in the delivery of the content. And so I'm actually a fan of expanding the number of slides to slow down the release of content,
Yeah.
aid that connection between presenter and audience.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, and we all, I did it at the start of, we've always used Zoom to run things in between face-to-face immersions. But I think so many people, I'm guilty of it the first 2 weeks of COVID, trying to have I've got a full-on studio. But I think it comes down, I call it headset, heart set, and tech set.
Mm.
So the headset's the skill, the knowledge, the heart set's a connection, which I think if you do that at 90%, you're there. And then the tech set is just the conduit to get your message across, right? Because I see so many people with these whiz bang amazing studios. There's no connection, no one's listening. So I think it's a good idea to go back and go, am I connecting? That's your number one question, yeah.
Really. And take time, like, take the slide down, ask a question of the audience, re-engage. But obviously there is tech that a lot of us use to support that, where you can be on screen within your presentation. But even if you haven't got that, create moments, do 3 to 5 slides, stop, take the presentation down, check in, summarize. We've just covered this section, set up, we're going to this section, back into the presentation. It just creates that, it breaks up the flow. That's it.
Aren't they, sort of?
Yeah, I talk about breaking up the flow to make a story flow, which sounds counterintuitive, but by punctuating stories like chapters of a book, you increase the engagement to the content, and again, you're slowing down the release of the content to be in control of that and keep your audience connected to you. And so even online doing that, and I think online again, it's, if I run a half-day workshop online, I have to be really cognizant of how I'm bringing the audience back in to connect them back to the content,
right,
and wander off. And so even a 30-40 minute presentation online, just break up the time the slides are on screen to create that reconnection with the audience.
Yeah, I love that. And your breakout rooms, or breakthrough rooms, whatever you want to call them. Something I did a lot, especially, we ran a lot of full day programs, and I'm very high energy. So we got great results with it. But I'd get people to go for a walk at lunch. I'd get them to go and grab a kitchen utensil and say, if I was running something on communication, what's a kitchen utensil that encapsulates how you communicate? I did it with an engineering group. So I had someone bring a Thermomix, and it went next level. But I brought out a 4-sided grater around little zesters, like little chunks of info, gratings like bigger chunks, so it's just breaking it up. And I love that. So what are the main trends in presenting at the moment? What are you seeing? Are there particular themes or ways of presenting? What are you seeing?
I think one of the negative things is trying to get more content in. There's this pressure because we are still meeting face to face less than we were previously. It's hard to get teams together, because particularly physically together, because we've got hybrid and different days in offices and all those sorts of things. So when people get the opportunity to present, even internally, I'm finding people are cramming more in. They're trying to go, we've got an update. Let's get everything into the update. Or we're going out, we've got a pitch opportunity, we've got to make sure we present every product we've got. And the problem is we overwhelm people. So rather than one thing sticking, we put 6 things out there and nothing sticks. And this is the paradox of choice, where the more choice we give people, the less we actually sell. That starts to kick in. And so there's a lot of work around simplifying the content, getting concise in the content. Narratives have also become, overall company narratives have become more complex, mergers, acquisitions, bringing divisions together. And we've lost the focus on value. We've really got very functional in the delivery of a lot of messages.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a tick and flick, get it out, and it's almost too, I have a bit of a rule with meetings or presentations or even emails. If you cannot put the key message as the subject line, don't have it. And even meetings, people, a lot of senior leaders we work with will have team catch up, and I'm like, what's the one thing they're going to walk away with? I don't really know. So why have it? But if you know it, that becomes sort of the theme, a bit like slides. My slides are very visual. but there's a key message for each one, like a sub, a
Yeah.
subheading type thing. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you think about off the back of online meetings, but then how work's evolved, we've got a lot more means of communication.
Yeah,
We've got
that's right.
Slack. It's now
Oh,
acceptable to use text and instant
yeah,
messenger on top
yeah.
of email, on top of presentations,
WhatsApp,
video.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so the email is no longer the primary means of sending an update or following
Right.
up. And so if the headline of the subject line of the email is update, well, why would I open that?
Yeah, that's right.
And so absolutely, it's like the slide headings. The slide headings in a presentation should tell the story and
Yeah,
land a major point of the slide, which you then bring to life on the slide.
yeah,
And then email construct is the same. What is the point of this email? That should be the
that's right.
subject line, and the first body of the text should explain and unpack that
Yeah.
headline of the email and give me a reason to keep reading on.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I absolutely love that. And virtual presenting, I always say, if it's over half an hour, stand up, double your energy, all that sort of thing. I'm a big believer, and I'd love to talk to you about this around energy. I'm very much, reader room to leader room. And I'm high energy. So when I'm with people like me, it's easy. But when I go into banks and I actually have to, and they're like, no coffee for you, Renee. I have to adjust, still get through, but it's much easier for me to be in flow around people that vibrate at a similar energy. How important is energy, I guess, to align and be congruent with your message?
I'm like, yeah, I face to face large rooms. I've been in Melbourne this week,
Yeah,
in rooms with people for full days, and
yeah.
so I feed off that energy. I find if I do a workshop online or a keynote online, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's a different, yeah, you're spot on. It's
You're
a different,
giving energy, you're not getting energy back. I feed off the room. A keynote, 1,000 people in a room, I feed off that
yeah,
energy, and that's my job to create that energy as
yeah,
the
that's right.
facilitator or the speaker. It's my job to create the environment where the audience is
Mm.
engaged and bought in,
Yeah,
but the room gives me energy. Online, you have to the only thing that's good online, not the only thing that's good online. There's lots of benefits to online, including reduced travel. But one of the nice things about online is when you've got a live comment stream.
yes, I love
You're
that.
on Zoom, people are
Yeah,
commenting live, and you can bring a question in.
yeah,
So it's really dynamic, and actually, that's quite stimulating as a facilitator
it is.
presenter, where you're getting this live sort of ticker
Yeah,
feed questions, and you can bring that into your content, and it's
yeah.
causing you to think and deliver at the same
And
time.
change direction if need be.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so I've actually started to bring that into now my face-to-face delivery with tools where people can post live
yeah,
questions, comment stream up on the screen, and
yeah.
make it more interactive. So that's a definite
Mm,
benefit in the online environment that we haven't
yeah,
had previously in the face-to-face environment.
yeah, love it.
Um, I do think you match energy, but I also think if you're the leader and you're leading a room, whether that's as a town hall, as a CEO, an entrepreneur,
Mm,
as a facilitator, it's your job to create the energy that is
that's
right
right.
for the environment that you're in. And
I
so
agree.
if you're flat, the room will be flat.
Yeah,
Uh, and if the message is flat and the room's flat,
yeah,
then everyone's going to walk out with shoulders down, a little bit slumped.
I know.
And so I think you have to create the energy to an extent, match the energy. You've always got to be slightly ahead of it.
I always say 20% up because I think energy, and I do a lot around energy and that side of things. Energy to me is it's make or break, but it helps build rapport. I have a thing called the 312. So your first 12 steps, your first 12 words gives the first 12 seconds of how people feel about you. And someone asked me the other day, like in a room that's coming in with energy, something good to say, not, oh, how crap's the weather? We'll get through this meeting in a minute. It's, hey, value your time, guys. Let's get into it. That sort of thing. But it's the same on a Zoom. And I always encourage leaders or whoever's presenting on a Zoom. I get on 10 minutes early. I always get a few participants come in early. You shoot the breeze, you build rapport, and then you're ready to sort of lift off and it sets the scene and the tone for that.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that positive start. So I talk about the pocket story for leaders,
Yeah.
and particularly emerging leaders. When you walk into a room, what's the thing that you've done, seen, read your business has achieved recently that you're proud of, that gives you something to enter that conversation. You know, we've just won this award, or we saw this great piece of work, or the marketplace has shifted recently, or I saw this in the press about your business, that lifts the conversation. So you're prepared. It's like it's almost like having an index card in your pocket where you've written a little story of something you've seen that takes you away from, oh, wasn't the weather terrible at the weekend? Which is, you know,
or my team lost the footy for those in Australia. I love that. I think that's important. That's what I mean about the first 12 words, whether it's an update, a compliment that's genuine, not too Pollyanna. So I do a lot on optimism, and the energy of optimism in cultures, and something I do with all my workshops and presentations is who and what are you optimistic about? And what it does is just asking that question makes people become more optimistic. And Victor Purton, who's a good friend of mine, he's the CEO of the Centre of Optimism, and I interview him in my book, and he went around the world with that question. So people in third world countries to the UN, and it's such a great question, and it brings gratitude in, because I think gratitude and resilience underlie optimism. And I know that helped me a lot in COVID, even before presentations when we had back-to-backs. It's how lucky am I to be able to still make a difference, you know, from home, right? So I love that, setting the scene, really important. I got some of your amazing lessons that you sent through, and I love when two things appear to be the same, the one that has an emotional connection will win over the one that doesn't, by Seth Godin, who I love as well. Love that.
Yeah, I think it's a weird thing in business that we sometimes fear emotion.
Yeah.
It feels soft, and the word emotion leads us into feelings, and we don't like talking about feelings, but we are emotional beings. And in business communication, so emotion doesn't have to be the leader has to cry, or we have to be telling jokes. It's emotion creates stronger memories and attaches us to products and the stories that we hear. And it's why we buy expensive, fast cars. That there is no rational reason to buy a sports car.
No.
There are a million emotional reasons to buy a sports car. Linked to status and how we feel and what it says about us. And that's why we don't all drive small two-door cars, which are perfectly functional and do what most of us need to do, which is drive one person around. So emotion is the key to forming really strong, powerful memories that are easy to recall. And when we don't have that, then price becomes the determining factor.
That's right. And bringing emotion in congruently. You know, you see a lot of, I shouldn't say it, but a lot of TED Talks, I've seen the same talk in 8 different places and it's rehearsed. I think you've got to bring in real emotion at that time. I do a lot of work around emotional clearing. I've always done it, but I've officially brought it into a lot of our corporate stuff, and people are so open to it. And I think now with that human piece, and, you know, vulnerability is getting a bit overdone, but I think just being the real you, the emotion also helps us to deal with, I think, one of the number one barriers to presenting, which is nervousness. You know, we all know the statistics. You and I thrive on it. I've had friends watch me do keynotes that have left because they felt physically sick seeing me up on a stage. Everyone's different. What are some tips for those people that have got the IP and the thoughts and the intention, but literally feel physically sick getting up and presenting?
That's a good question. Again, I believe confidence starts in your content. So when you know, firstly, when you know what you've got is of value to the audience you're presenting to.
Yes.
That is, I know who my audience is. I know what they care about, and I know I've got something to say that's of interest to them. Orientation is already, I'm here to help them.
Yeah.
Then I structure my content to help me, number one, present that content. So I've got slides with clear slide headings. I've got key points called out on the slide. And at worst, if I just remind myself by reading the headings what I'm trying to say, I can get through this. The fear of, because what's fear? The nervousness comes from fear, and the fear comes from forgetting what to say, They're not interested in what I've got to say. Why am I here? Imposter syndrome. All
Yes.
of that fear is bubbling up from, or
Mm.
that nervousness is bubbling up from those fears. So if you're confident that you've got something to say that's of value to the audience because you know what they want and you've reorientated your
Yeah.
content to make it of value to them, you've
Yeah.
structured it to help you present it, you've structured it to help you, to prompt you at key points through the presentation, you've
Yeah.
paced it so that you're not going to rush through it and you can take a break, you've got
Mm.
a question slide, something to help you slow down.
Yeah.
And I focus really, really heavily on like your 12 steps. In the first couple of slides, how are you connecting with the audience?
That's
How are
important.
you telling a story that they
Yeah.
can relate to? I saw something on the way here today, and I thought, wow, what a great morning to be presenting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just
Something
that,
that's topical that people, it could even be the latest news, right?
or I
Yeah.
saw this in the news today, and I thought, oh no, this is not the day I want to be doing this presentation.
No.
The
Yeah.
audience laughed. You're connected, and now you can go, oh, okay, we're in the same room.
Yeah. That's
Now
right.
I can get into my content. And so there's some little tricks around connecting before we get into the content
Yeah.
that help with
Definitely.
those nerves. But for me, confidence to overcome the fear
Mm.
starts long before you stand up on a stage or walk
Oh,
into a room.
definitely. I always say the opposite of trusting yourself or trusting anyone is fear.
Mm.
So what am I fearing? And I'm a big believer. I love self-doubt because
Mm.
it's growth, right? I'm one of those. I think the day that you just complacent and walk in, you might be confident, but you're not second guessing is the day that you have just become sort of status quo. I love what you said. It comes back to planning, like anything, and confidence. And I know there's a model Matt Church shared years ago, which is, and I use it with any speakers bureau when they bring me in. I go, do you want me to inspire or inform? Are the audience left or right brain? Normally they go, it's a bit of everything. So I always please a few people and change a people.
Yeah.
Um, I love the story bit. I remember years ago I was doing a time manage. This is like 14 years ago, a time management which I call self-management now because time is time. And I was 20 minutes late because a truck going under the Burnley Tunnel full of apples crashed and my car and I were covered in apples. I was on the news, right? But the irony, I was going to a time and I am so on time. It's a big value of mine. I nearly thought about not even going, but I used
Not
it
showing
as
up.
a thing. And a few of them were like, and then they saw it. And it just was such a great way to break the ice, build rapport. And they're like, she's just human. We're all the same.
That's it. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that sort of, uh, Bob Iger talks about fear, turning fear into courage.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
you have the belief that you've got something of value to share with people,
Yeah.
then you can go to that courage place. And you'll never, I get nervous presenting.
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
Um,
Yeah.
but I love that because it
It's
makes me
right.
sharp. The day I'm not nervous in front of 1,000 people or I put a headset microphone on, stand on the stage is the day
Yeah.
my content isn't right for that audience. I've got
Yeah.
bored of my content. I'm delivering it too much. I need to change
Yeah.
something up.
Yeah.
I don't want to be bored to the point
No.
where I don't have that fear to get those nerves
No.
because that energizes me. It focuses me, and so that little bit of nervousness coming from that little bit of fear keeps us sharp,
Yeah. It
and
does.
gets us onto the edge.
Yeah. It does. It gives you an edge. And I think the last question I'd love to ask you is I'm very all my keynotes I end up not on the stage or
Mhm.
the camera guy can't find me. My stuff's highly interactive. Years ago, I'd get shunned for that. They'd be like, Renee, stay up there. I ran something to 400 people 2 weeks ago, and I had everyone playing our new game, running a cut through communication workshop, basically keynote. How important do you think interaction is? I'm talking about leaders with teams, leaders on a stage, asking questions. How important is that in
I think
today's
it's
world?
I think it's critical again to punctuate content, to bring
Yeah,
people in, to check understanding.
yeah,
There are two caveats to that. Lame questions and asking people to share between two people. So
Yeah.
lame questions are questions which either can embarrass somebody
Mm.
and make someone feel like they don't know something, or
Yeah.
you're just putting the question in to take a break and
Yeah.
it's not really generating a deep thought within someone. It's like,
Mm.
how are we going? Does everyone understand where we're at? It's a little bit patronizing. It's a lame question.
Yeah.
Any questions is a lame question, as opposed to, hey, we've just done 10 minutes on X, Y, and Z. Love to know the three things you've taken out so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
Now I've
that's
got to think
awesome
about that.
style. Yeah.
Triggering thought process.
Yeah.
And then it's a facilitator's game, I think,
Mm.
to trade time, but getting people to go, oh, we've just shared some stuff. Now turn to the person next to you and
Yeah.
share your experience. It's
Yeah.
like, well, no, give them something more.
Yeah.
Actually, let's share that together. Let's have a shared experience. We can then have a conversation around.
Yeah.
So I think interaction is critical,
Yeah. Good.
to
Yeah.
punctuate content, to bring people into the content, and to check understanding of the content. Um, I think I'm like you. I feed off questions. I find questions
Yeah.
challenging, and the curlier the question, the more interesting. Like
I love it.
we
It's
haven't prepared for
challenging.
this.
It
I
keeps
don't know
me
what
on
you're going
our
to ask
feet.
next. But it's a flowing, interesting, engaging
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah. Yeah.
because we're feeding off of each other's energy, but
Yeah.
we're having to think about the questions and the answers each of us is giving.
Yeah.
And so I think if you can get into that kind of dialogue with teams and when you're
Mm.
delivering content, then you know you've got an engaged audience.
Yeah, love it. I love it. And I think it's almost speakers should be facilitating and coaching as they're speaking. Become it's become more like a multi-dimensional mode of delivering a message, which is cool.
It's not
Yeah.
information out. And if you find that you've got 90 slides and an hour and a half of information out, question how could that be 45 minutes
Yeah.
and an interactive, not necessarily a workshop, but how can
Yeah.
you punctuate that content to check understanding, bring the audience in, and ensure there's value, right? Someone's giving up an hour and a half of their time. What do they
That's
want
right.
from that?
That's right. I love it. I love it. So love to ask you, for our listeners out there, if there was one, if they're thinking about, I present, I can take it to the next level, or I've really never presented because I've been hiding behind whatever it is, fear, lack of trust. What's one key thing someone could do today just to move the needle towards being a really effective and impactful presenter?
The simplest one always comes to mind for me is go through your presentation and make sure that the headlines of your slides tell the story.
Yeah, beautiful.
You or your audience just read the headlines, they'd get the story.
Yeah, love that.
So don't have about us, why us,
Oh,
insight, coming up next.
mm,
That's not going to help you present that content, and it's not going to
yeah,
help the audience stay connected and follow along.
that's
So
right.
write the narrative of your story on a piece of paper, write that as the headlines of your slides.
Yeah, I
It
love that.
helps the nervous presenter and it helps an audience stay connected.
I love it. And it's a heavy lifting model too, asking questions, especially I always ask a question at the start, and I hate to say this, but years ago you'd get introduced and then I'd go, hi, and my name's Renee. And now I just go, imagine, and I just go into a question, pause for impact, and then go into it. I've absolutely loved chatting with you today. Before we let everyone know how they can get in touch with you and buy your amazing new book, I've got 4 quick little trivial questions.
Okay.
Last day on earth or last night on earth, what would you eat?
Sausage, egg, and chips
Say
with
that
beans.
again. Sausage.
Sausage, egg, and chips with beans.
I love it with beans. Awesome. Favorite noise?
Or breaking waves. The bigger the surf, the better. The energy in a nice rough sea breaking onto a beach. Really, really relaxing, actually, and a really creative space to be.
Yeah, beautiful. Favorite word?
Possibility.
Possibility. Awesome. And we didn't get to go into your amazing being a pilot, so you've done that. But if you were to have a different career, what would it be?
So it was going to be blimp pilot. I'd say probably seaplane pilot today, because of where I live on the northern beaches. I'm surrounded by water. I love flying.
Yeah.
Having a plane tied up at the end of I don't have a boat wharf, but if I had a boat wharf, I'd like a plane tied up at the end of it, and then I'd like a little seaplane business in and out of beautiful islands, because I love sharing what I do
Yeah.
with people who have a passion for the things that I'm interested in. And I
Yeah.
think that would be a beautiful mix of things to share.
Yeah. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast,
Renee,
David.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Such a great conversation, such a great connection. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Just resonate with everything you're saying. I love your energy. How do people find you and how do they buy your book?
So davidfish.com.au is the website. There is you can buy the book from the website, which will come directly from me, and that will be a signed copy. It's also available online at all of the usual Amazons, Booktopias, Barnes Nobles. There's an ebook version, but I think, as you found, the physical book is selling much better than the ebook version. And then my email is just fish@davidfish.com.au.
Amazing. We'll have all David's contact details, and you're obviously on LinkedIn, David, as well.
Yes, I am. Yep.
Yeah.
David_fishy fish.
Okay. We'll put them in the show notes. So thanks again, David. Thank you to everyone out there that's been listening or watching. As always, if you have any topics that are top of mind or people that you'd love us to interview, please let us know. If you're enjoying the podcast, please share it. And if you're happy to write a review, that'd be amazing. We have some upcoming public programs and Cook Connect corporate team building one-day retreats. So go to reneegiarrusso.com for more information. Otherwise, wherever you are in the world, have an amazing day or evening. Thank you for listening to the Limitless Leaders podcast. So you don't miss an episode, make sure you follow the show in your favorite podcast app. Feel free to share this podcast with your family, friends, and work colleagues. If you're enjoying the show, find out more on what we do at RG Dynamics at www.reneegiarrusso.com. Until next time, be limitless.